Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have you back again this week for another great podcast. I think I've got a great guest for you. We're going to go a little different direction, but it's all going to be about business because really life is about business. And in this fourth quarter, what I really wanted to do is set you up for how we can set success up going in the end of this year, but also really starting out in 2024 that we're creating the success you want. You know, I love talking about the 6P business owner formula, and those 6 areas are people, productivity, pricing, promotion, process, and profits. Today, let's meet our guest, and he will share with us. Trevor, will you share with our guest what problem will you help them solve today?
I want to help the listeners solve a problem of pursuing success amidst a world full of distractions that come in many forms, both good and bad. But a lot of the times what I've found is the negative distractions take away, and the positive distractions could be even more detrimental to the success that we're all trying to achieve.
That's excellent. I'm excited because today we got Trevor Rosenthal. He's passionate about personal growth and learning new things. He recently completed a crossover in the business program at the Harvard Business School, where he gained insights and skills on how to leverage his sports background in other domains. He is also a board member of the Baseball Assistance Team, a nonprofit organization that provides financial and medical assistance to former baseball players and their families. Trevor's mission is to make a positive impact, not only on the baseball field, but also in his sphere of influence. He is always looking for new opportunities to share his stories of overcoming adversity, building self-confidence, and the role sports have played in shaping him in the person he is today. Trevor, it is exciting to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, it's exciting to be here, Gary. I'm a big fan of all you're doing, and also a big fan of the show.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on. And, you know, I remember those days. And when I got from a mutual friend to be able to meet up with Trevor online through Zoom and stuff, we've got to have several conversations. I just thought you would be a perfect person to come on the podcast because, number one, you're learning about business and the things you want to do after your sports career. But to me, sports and business has such an synergies that it's unbelievable because, you know, on the sports, you don't always rise to the top at the very beginning, and you have challenges and opportunities. And you've seen that in your career over time, because I remember when you were with the Cardinals. So give us a little bit of update. It's the end of the season now, but if you don't mind, give us a little bit of update. What's Trevor doing now kind of in that part of it, but where do you kind of want to go looking forward? Will you kind of going in the next season, or what's your plan?
Yeah. So where I'm at today, when I do a little bit of reflecting, it puts me back to where I was at the beginning of my career. There is a lot of uncertainty heading forward into the future. And I find myself in a place, again, the same place I was when I first started out in professional baseball, of wanting to achieve great success, but not knowing exactly what that looks like. And that is a great challenge in and of itself. Fortunately, building upon the success I've had previously in the career of baseball, I have learned that I took steps to get better every single day. I did a lot of small disciplines that over time compounded, and I was fortunate to reap the reward of 10 years of Major League Baseball experience and a lot of personal success off the field as well. And I look forward to now using that going forward. And I'm training currently in preparation for a return to baseball, but also dipping my toes into some endeavors and some waters that I hadn't experienced previously, which include business dynamics, which include investing dynamics. And I'm very excited about all of those. It's a new learning experience, and I'm really enjoying being challenged mentally as well as the physical demands that it takes to be an athlete.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think it's so important because just some of the analogies you said, what happens in sports, we talked about this a little bit offline, is so true to what happens in business. Some people early in their business career, they create great success, but then they see that challenges, obstacles come. And like you said, in the beginning, when you start a business, they say over 50% of small businesses, when they start, within the first 5 years, they'll be out of business. So they have those challenges and those obstacles they face to really be able to achieve the career they want. And I think that becomes the real key, is understanding that as a small business owner, but how do you work through it? So one of the questions I would ask you there is, how important do you think it is to really be surrounded by those right people to help you on that path of success?
I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by great mentors and great individuals. And some of those relationships happened out of generosity, but a lot of them were my own self-pursuit. And at an early age, recognizing there were people living lives that I wanted for myself. And I didn't want to take that from them. I didn't want to steal what they had, but I wanted to see what they were doing, how they went about each day, and how they lived their lives, so I could then in turn emulate that and hopefully reach the same level of success, or if not more. So that was 100% very important. But also early on, I learned that, and you learn this in baseball because you have a lot of coaches. You have a lot, especially on the pitching side, there's a lot of different people that give you information. At the end of the day, none of those coaches are going to be responsible for the outcome. So learning to also be your best coach and taking the responsibility for yourself is also very important. You can't always rely on the ones that surround you.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And the same way in the business side, there's a lot of people that give you advice. Oh, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. But you have to kind of know that direction of where you want to go and how you want to kind of move forward. And I think that becomes so crucial. Now, you did get surrounded because you were with my hometown team, that I love, because I'm in Jefferson City, Missouri, of the St. Louis Cardinals. But share with us, just because I think this helps business owners put it in perspective, and I'll come back to kind of relay it back there. But what are the odds of becoming a Major League Baseball player?
Oh gosh, yes. Becoming a Major League Baseball player, the odds are heavily stacked against you. So it's important when you're setting out on the journey to not focus on the odds, because it'll give you a slim light of hope. You can put it in terms, it's a small percentage of a very small percentage of players make it to the major leagues, and then an even smaller percentage of those players have a career that's fulfilling enough to sustain financial flexibility and freedom for the rest of their life. So it's a very demanding career, but one that I have been able to learn so many lessons from. And I was so fortunate to endure the career long enough to come out the other side, gaining a very unique perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, because in business, it's very similar. There's a smaller odds of people that become this huge business. Not everybody becomes a, Meta or Facebook or one of those, and they always see these billionaires or the Bill Gates or any of those individuals. But really, it's about the life that you're running. And that, I think that becomes a key. And I'm sure it's the same in Major League Baseball. If you only focus on one prize and that falls through, I mean, it can be crushing for individuals, and then they have a hard time stepping out of that. One business, you have to do the same thing. You've got to take risk. You got to put yourself out there every time. So I guess I would really ask you in this area is, we talked a little bit about those obstacles, but what are some of those obstacles you see, and from what you've heard, and even you've had a father that was a business owner when you were younger? Share a little bit about some of those things, and we'll kind of play those back and forth from sports to business.
Yeah. So yeah, growing up, I was born in Kearney, Nebraska, small town. My dad was a small business owner of a restaurant in Kearney, Nebraska. And he decided around the age that I'm at now, which is kind of earth shattering for me to wrap my mind around. He decided at that point to change careers, go back to law school, and become an attorney. And I think that what he demonstrated for me early in my childhood really gave me a different perspective on what risk looked like. I think when I think of risk, it's not an action is not as risky as a non-action, if that makes sense. So the way have viewed risk, and the way I've applied it to my baseball career, is not necessarily thinking, well, what if I pursue this? It's more of the mind frame of, what if I don't pursue this? What if I don't show up? What if I don't do the extra work? That to me had always seemed like the biggest risk that I could possibly take, was putting my fate essentially in the hands of the world or in the hands of somebody else. And that was demonstrated for me by my dad and his action to pursue a rigorous career, a rigorous education, and come out on the other side ahead. And I'm sure he had high hopes for his career, and he might not have gotten exactly where he wanted to go. Much like my baseball career, when I set out in the major leagues, my aspirations were to be a Hall of Fame baseball player, a Hall of Fame pitcher, the best of all time. And I've fallen somewhat short of that, but I still came a lot farther than, if I went back to my 6-year-old self, a lot farther than my 6-year-old self would ever have dreamed I would have come.
Yeah. And I think I love what you say about risk there. And it's kind of that change, and business owners go through the same thing. Is if you take no action, I know there's a lot of people, I get some of them, they'll talk to me because I'm a business coach, and they'll come up and say, man, I've always wanted to start a business. But that risk, that non-action, puts them in the non-action. And I understand we all have commitments and different stages of life. But I tell anyone, you can become an entrepreneur. Nowadays, it's so much easier than it was before, because with online and our marketplace is so different, the capability is so much more there. But that action, and I would tell business owners that's listening, what is the non-action you're taking right now in your business? Do you need to take action on it? Do you need to move forward with that? Because one thing that's happening, and I don't care if it's business, and I'm sure it's happening in baseball, but I know it's happening in education. It's even maybe slower, but it's happening somewhat in government. But life is changing. The world is changing. So we have to change with it. And I think that's what I'm so excited about. Right now, you're kind of in that stage. Yes, you're still in the baseball area, still training there, but you're also training your mind with what you're doing with Harvard and some of the things you're doing there. So share with us, where's that desire come from, to take it kind of when that time comes that you decide to leave the baseball career, what do you kind of see for yourself there?
Yeah, it's been a really great challenge. And looking into uncertainty, it's always it can instill a lot of fear, and that's uncomfortable to me. I don't really want to make decisions based out of fear. I like to be aggressive. I like to attack situations and feel overly prepared. I think that has benefited me in sports. I think back to when I was in the minor leagues, and before I even had really any prospect of making a major league roster, I was doing things then that 10 years later I eventually reap the rewards for. Waking up early, stretching at 4:30 in the morning in the basement, a cold basement, when no one knew what was going on, when no one had any idea who Trevor Rosenthal could potentially be. I was doing all these things that eventually paid off. And that's how I view now. That's going back to the action versus non-action, thinking, okay, what can I do to set myself up for future success? I don't know what that success is going to be. I believe I do have skills and traits and accomplishments that I can apply in different areas, but that's not guaranteed. And it's definitely not going to come without me putting in some effort or a lot of effort. And that's the way I've approached these last few months is, what are some steps I can take to not only better myself, but to ultimately be a better contributor to our society. And I've started with taking the crossover into business course through Harvard Business School, which was an enlightenment. It was something I really enjoyed in building on your work of just entrepreneurship, really a world that I hadn't realized before. As an athlete, we see the paychecks that we're getting and we see the effort we put in on the field. And when I'm on the mound, there's a front row in every stadium, and they're the most prestigious seats, the most expensive seats that you can purchase. They're often called the green seats. They are in Busch Stadium in St. Louis. And those seats are often filled with entrepreneurs and business people. And as my career went on and I began to form relationships with these individuals and seeing the work that they were doing, not only did I see the level of excellence and discipline that they demonstrated in their lives and in their professional lives as well, but I saw the rewards that they were getting. And so that was something that always in the back of my mind is, okay, baseball has a short time window. What can I do beyond baseball to continue to enjoy the rewards of hard work that I've enjoyed through sports? And that's led me into the interest in the business world. And now today doing continuing education through Harvard University, taking an academic writing course right now this fall semester and looking to take a couple more classes in the spring. Really not knowing where they're going to end up or where they're going to place me, but I know that this work and this effort will eventually pay off. Maybe not in the short term, but someday I think I will be happy that I put in the effort now.
Yeah. Kudos to you for that lifelong learning. And that's what I talk about all the time. Entrepreneurs, business people, individuals, we should be lifelong learners. You're listening to the Small Business Answer Man podcast. We'll be right back. Okay, awesome. We'll kind of take it from there if you're okay. And I'll kind of throw you, we'll talk a little bit. I'll kind of summarize that up a little bit. And then I may ask you if they're okay, like what you would tell parents and kind of looking that side of it. And we'll kind of wrap it around, kind of end up with the business side of it, maybe even the mental toughness, and have you talk about that a little bit, and we'll apply that back to business and stuff. Because today that's one of the big challenges, and that focus you mentioned at the very beginning, kind of hitting on that area, if that's okay.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. Here we go. And now back to the show. Well, Trevor, that's really exciting that, kind of really you have this entrepreneurial spirit because, not everybody has that, but a lot of people do. And you're getting to explore that some, learn, which is so vital. And it'll be interesting to see, you got to come back over time here when we'll be able to track that journey and stuff. And we'll share that with our listeners. But I thought one of the things that would be really important to talk about, because you've seen the side where you've grown up in sports and you've made it to the major league level, had challenges, obstacles like everyone does, but we've talked about it. There's only a small percentage of kids that play sports get into that elite level on that side of it. So what would be advice? I'm going to ask you from the parent standpoint, what advice would you give parents with their kids playing in youth sports?
Yeah, it's a big topic, and it's really an area through my lens of being an athlete. I have a lot of parents, a lot of dads approach me wanting to ask questions and how they can help little Johnny be the next big thing in sports or just to reach his potential. I think that should ultimately be the goal for every parent. Is we just provide the opportunity, provide the resources, that there won't be any limitations. And my advice, and this is ever evolving, is I have 3 young children that I'm raising myself, and I'm trying to answer these questions on a daily basis. But it starts with creating a home, a loving home, a safe home where the children can feel comfortable. And I think that foundation can be overlooked at times. And certainly putting an effort into the sport and the skills and physical development are all important. But you should also be putting the same amount of attention and effort in the details that you live your everyday life by the way you treat your spouse, your partner, the type of the type of home that is ran, the meals and the sleep schedules. I mean, there's so many things, and it's exhausting to be a parent. It is not an easy job. But I think as a parent, that is our responsibility. The coach of the team, the instructors, it's their responsibility to demand the excellence and demand the hard work. And we want to encourage that. And we want to encourage that by being hard workers ourselves and being disciplined ourselves. But I like to leave that responsibility predominantly on the coaching staff. And as a dad, as much as I want to get my kids out in the yard and training and working, my responsibility looks a little bit different. And so I think that's how I would answer that question and frame it for the minds of parents today. And then once you build that foundation, there's different levels that you can go on top of there. But to start there is, I think, going to be the most return on investment that you can possibly have as a parent.
Yeah, it sets really a foundation for them to be able to have that success and know that it's safe, like you talked about there. And instead, the one I would give, and I don't know where I picked it up, if I heard it on a podcast or from a podcast guest, but the gentleman said, one of the keys is when they get done with the game, don't try to coach right after the game. If they've had a tough loss or anything else, instead at that moment, just say, boy, I sure enjoy you to play. And I missed that early in my career with my kids. But boy, as he got in college football and things of that nature, that was always my comment and trying to say, well, you should have done this or you should have done this, because then you're taking away from that moment of truly experiencing. It really sets that foundation, what you talked about, because then that they feel comfortable that if they are having challenges, they can come to mom and dad and get that support that they need there. So thanks for sharing that. I think it's just so important for parents now to realize that, not every Johnny is going to grow up and be a Major League Baseball player. And a lot of it takes talent, but it also takes what you said, discipline, and the desire and, to do the extra work, just like you've done in your career, Trevor. I think it's really important. We ought to touch on one topic. We talked about just a little bit, but you mentioned a little bit with all the distractions, all the chaos today, and we're seeing that in business as well in personal life that's there, is this mental toughness. So when a pitcher gets out there in the major leagues, they can throw 90 to 100 miles an hour, but the only problem is the guy on the other end can hit those balls too. So what's that mental toughness to get you prepared? And then the other key is, some people think you all had just a great life, but I don't think it's too much fun when you fly from New York to California or back to Missouri, and then you may have got in at 3 or 4 in the morning, and you've got to get ready for a game that afternoon. So share with us that mental toughness and how you kind of approach that in your life.
Yeah, it is an amazing career. I mean, there is really not, there's not going to be another field that I get into where I have the opportunity to fill 50,000 seats of people cheering me on, and how, millions more on TV watching every single move, and just that experience that is not going to be replicated in anything else I do in life. So certainly, I mean, being a professional athlete is a very special, and I'm very lucky and very fortunate to have been a part of that. But it does take tremendous amount of work. And this is something that I've seen from from myself and from players who have had careers much more accomplished than mine, Hall of Fame players. And this is what the average fan might not see is it's really a 365, 7 days a week job that never turns off. Every single day, what you're eating, how you're sleeping, how you're training, how your body feels really determines the success that you have on the field and how you get rewarded and compensated in return. And so you can't, when you're dealing with the body, it's just a constant job of knowing what are you doing? What choices am I making right now that are going to impact me tomorrow and the next day? And what do I want to do best? And what is my expectation? And I think back to early in my career again, where before I even made it to the major leagues, I had gotten drafted late in the draft. I was not a top prospect, coming out of college. And the expectations, I would say, were relatively low. And up until that point, I had a desire, I had a work ethic, I was interested in the game, but there were still choices that I was making that were potentially taking away from the success that I could ultimately have. You could say the potential. And I remember very specifically one off season, I came home from my first professional season, which was the lowest ranks of the lowest ranks, a league that no one really ever would hear about or know about. And I came home and I was in the middle of my off season working hard, and a friend came over, and this friend was just an average friend and had the same interest as most people. It was a Friday night, and we were catching up, hanging out, and he brought a 12-pack of beer with him, and he offered me a beer. And up until that point, I think in my life I would have partook in the beverage and the celebration and the good time. For some reason, something clicked in my mind where I was, for the first time ever, I declined. I turned down the offer, and it went over fine, and we had a great night. But something changed, and that mindset shift for me of being able to say no to something set me up for the next decision and the next decision. And I realized I began to cut out more than I was adding in to my schedule, and cutting out things. So there's only so much time in the day. And this is something that I see with a lot of my teammates, is they try and do too many things at one time. And with a limited amount of time resource, it's very powerful to be able to focus and dedicate yourself to one thing, and doing that one thing for a long period of time. And I think that helped me in talking about confidence and discipline. Those little no's, those little actions are what create that confidence. And knowing when I'm on the mound in front of 50,000 people, there's no doubt in my mind that I've done everything I could to prepare for that moment. So it's just enjoying it at that point, and knowing that the preparation has paid off and put me in a place to where now I'm free to perform.
Well, I think you shared that. That's excellent, because that mental toughness is the preparation, but you said preparation is mind, body, and spirit, really, how you sleep, all those things that go in. But I love what you talked about, because we have the same challenges as business owner. What choices are we going to make today to move our business forward? And the thing is, business owners have a lot of opportunity. And I tell people all the time, because I run a mastermind group, Trevor, and I bring business owners in. I said, one of your greatest challenges is yourself. Because really, when you're the business owner, we're not responsible to anyone. Yeah, we may have a family and we're responsible there. We should say we're responsible for our employees. But literally, if I wanted to go out and play golf today, I can go play golf, But the only thing is, do that too many times on those choices, and guess what's going to happen? You're not going to have the business there, and you're going to instead be working for someone else in that career. And I think that becomes the key. And same thing you've seen in off season, and even during the season, the choices you make set you up for that success. Well, I wanted to share this because when we got to know each other, we were talking business things, and to people, they may say, professional athlete, number one, you want to be in that business world, but I think they merge so well together because of the synergies that are there in that area. So I truly appreciate you joining us on the podcast. But before I let you go, I have to ask you this question. I want you to share, what would be your best advice you would give business owners?
My best advice for business owners is making the main thing the main thing. Staying focused on the actions that you know are going to get you to where you want to go. And a lot of times we can see shiny objects. We get the shiny object syndrome. We get distracted and we want to either move on or try something for the fear of missing out that we see our neighbor doing. So I think being able to stick to what we know is going to work and pay off, and doubling down on that even at times is going to be the most beneficial over the long period of time.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a great advice for us. And business owners have that same challenge. And really everybody does now because of what happened with social media and that's there. We have instant communication all the time. Now, if you'd like to connect with Trevor, go to Instagram. He's the Trevor Rosenthal. And we'll have all this in show notes. Or he's on Twitter also as Trev Rosenthal. So we have those links in our show notes so you can go there. Check out some of his information. I went to Instagram and I saw on Twitter too, you've got some great information up. You got some great little video clips in there too, talking about it. And some of the people that he's met along the way and sharing some of those stories there. It's kind of interesting to see because, of course, I was really interested because there's several of them are Cardinal people. So any Cardinal fans, you want to go check that out because Trevor's got some great information up there. So, Trevor, we can't thank you enough for joining us today on the podcast. Glad you joined us. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this was a great time, Gary. I really appreciate you having me on. And also, like I mentioned earlier, a big fan of your work and what you're doing with these small business owners and entrepreneurs. It's very important to have that coach in your life that's giving you actionable advice that you can build on. But like we talked about, knowledge without action is just potential, and we want to take that action and achieve that success that we're all striving for.
So let's go out there. Let's take some action. You decide what it is. What's the choice you need to make for yourself today? Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. That's all the time we have. But until next time, go out there each and every day and continue to grow your business. Remember, don't ascend to the top of the mountain by yourself. Number one, it's lonely if you're at the top and no one else is with you. But when you help others achieve success, you get significance in your life, and that becomes the real key. Make it a great day. We'll see you next week.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.